Hello, wherever you are, and whenever you're tapping into this video. Glad to have you with me for a time of looking at things differently. We're going to Egypt. Now, I didn't think up until a few days ago that I was going to be doing something like this, but the idea started coming to share about the trip I took to Egypt in 2019 to 2020. I was there for 3 weeks and saw things I wasn't expecting. And I had done research before going, checking out different programs about the pharaohs and I learned about different dates and stories around these pharaohs and but it was different. It was different. So I would like to help you shift your perspective on this area that we've been taught to believe. So let's get started and see what happens. So, looking with new eyes. If you don't think outside the box, you'll never get out of it. So, yeah, let's get out of the box. Let's use our imagination. Okay. So, so the purpose, of course, is to expand our awareness of what we've been programmed to see because it really does dull our imagination and allow us to wonder that these images are real and not myths and legends as they've been influencing us to believe. And we're going to look at giants, hybrids, different races that are there. And yeah, I hadn't seen these kinds of images before I went. And I'm assuming you haven't either, unless you've been there. And I get excited about this the more I see other alternative thinkers on YouTube. And we've been there for some time. But there's some kind of another wave of truth that's gripping people all over the world, especially those that have been part of Satan's little season. We're trying to get some sense and order of time amidst all the deception we've been bombarded with. So I'm still trying to put some pieces together, and this is the latest that I've got. And another tip here is to try and look outside the narrative that they've given us of millions of years old or even tens of thousands of years old. May not be that long. Okay, so giants. I think for most of us, in at least the biblical context, giants is not anything new. But being around these gigantic structures really shifts your awareness. Just seeing pictures or hearing about them, it's a mental concept. And in sci-fi movies, it's fantasy. But here, try to think of this was a real giant leader, or this was a real hybrid being. Yeah, this is Ramses, and he was big. Yeah, and he reigned for a long time. Another being that's quite big. This is in Abu Simbel, which is in the southern part of Egypt. This is fascinating. Just seeing these huge statues. And look at here's one of the attendants that hangs out there, and here's another guy. Huge. Supposedly they moved Abu Simbel from another region, and I don't remember the story around it. Hmm. Another angle to Ramesses and maybe a smaller sized attendant. Huge pillars. People our size could not move these. Quite a contrast. Yeah, this was in Karnak Temple, which is outside of Luxor, more the middle part of Egypt. Yeah, again, walking amongst these kinds of structures really shifts the awareness of what happened here. And then the few tours that I got, things didn't add up, which is why I haven't taken tours much in my travels. This allows the wonder to really grip you. Okay, so next we're moving to elongated heads. So here, try to consider looking at them as they are hybrids and could have been through genetic manipulation that they did in labs over certain periods of time. And they're still doing this stuff today. We just don't see a lot of these beings. Whistleblowers in the military have said that they've been in underground facilities with these kinds of beings. But let's look at these as they were walking all around. They could have been a product of crossbreeding from different kinds of beings, human and another, and it alters the DNA. And we are conditioned to think, oh, they're aliens. They came from someplace else. Yeah, the alien narrative was a hard one for me to let go of. Some more, another huge elongated head. This was in Luxor Museum. There's definitely skulls found of the elongated heads in Peru and Bolivia and in other parts of the world too. Yep. And then the thing on the chin, was this a decoration that they used? That's as far as I was told. And wrapping up facial hair. He was a normal sized being, as far as I remember. And this guy, was he a servant, some kind of a consultant? He's sitting on something that kind of brings him up. He's not dressed. And that's another thing I noticed a lot in Egypt. The people are half dressed or fully dressed, not dressed at all. Even some people of status. This one I remember in the Luxor Museum, and he was a priest or some kind of an advisor or consultant. And yeah, there's a light shining on him and of some importance that they would have made this statue of him. Seemed like a normal size. Akhenaten, look at his features, a mix of African, Asian. I mean, there's a lot of information out there about him. I don't remember much of it anymore. I'm just looking at the beings that were there, but he seems to have some kind of authority about him. Next is his wife, I believe. She was big, tall, and thick around the waist. I don't remember how many children they had, but I vaguely remember um, some statues of them together with a child. Hmm. Okay, now we're going to get to some hybrids. So you'll see hybrids in royalty and leadership and just being normal. They call the dog-headed ones the Cynocephali. And there's reports that they would bark and also speak. But this one seems to have some status. Here is another one with a normal woman. Some sense of cooperation or friendliness, even though I don't remember seeing hardly anything with emotions being showed. It's more about what they look like in their position and what they're doing and trying to figure out what they're doing. Yeah, normal size. Yeah, Osiris is the one with the bird head and another dog head. Now, what I had thought and was told, these are all symbolic. They're representing something about the human. But if I were a leader, would I want this representation of me? It just, after seeing it in so many places, it's like, this was real. Um, a leader and his son, maybe he has a normal wife, human wife, and they were able to have a normal son. Here we have um, a lion kind of a head, maybe. He's got status. He's above this human. And this human's offering him something. Two women servants to this being. This isn't a dog. It's almost like a goat, maybe. And noticing that these women are lighter skinned. I saw a lot more darker skinned images of Egyptians. And there's information about what the circle on the head is, and I don't really remember so much now. Maybe it's connected to they worship the sun. And we've got the Ankh here. That's everywhere. The eye. Is it the Eye of Horus? I don't know. Here's more beings. Again, a dog head, a different kind of a dog head. Seems a little bit more of some royalty here, possibly. Darker skinned Egyptians. And this kind of looks like a snake. Hmm. Okay, so a little bit of information here about hybrids, that there's other legends of hybrids in various cultures. So a famous book in Hinduism is the Ramayana, and they had a monkey race that were servants to Ram, and they were very devout and loyal to him. And one especially was Hanuman. He could change his size through prayer, mainly making himself be very big. And he could fly and very devout to Ram. And another character was Sugriv. He had a monkey head and he was a noble leader, highly respected, and yeah, good to his tribe of people. Also, other giants in this story of Ramayan was Kumbhakarna. He was cursed through some story that he spent most of his time sleeping, but they would have to try to stir him and wake him up during a time of crisis when they would need his help. And then we've got Saint Christopher. He was half dog, and he changed his form after carrying the baby Christ across a river, according to that legend. So, and there's even more. And I asked Chat GPT about this, but of course they just said these are myths and these are legends. And it's interesting that, it's said a couple times at least in scripture that Jesus did so many miracles and it could not be recorded in just one book. So could he have traveled to Egypt and helped with beings for repentance and maybe heal them or some kind of a change happen? It's interesting to wonder about because there's so many there. So a little bit of looking at hermetics, which some sources say this is even older than the time of Jesus, and dealing with ways of trying to make us more divine through various substances. There's a lot of images around offering flowers and liquids in urns or vases. And yeah, so just looking at this. Here's in the tomb of Ramses. He was a tax collector. And the preservation here was quite good, and there was glass around some of the displays. Another one, dark skin with a light-skinned wife, I assume. This was the ceiling there. I seem to remember this was part of a vineyard, but sometimes looking at this, it reminds me of pine cones, some kind of a flower that could have been growing there that was used in these mixtures. The terrain of Egypt thousands of years ago was supposedly different than it is today. And it could have shifted after one of the cataclysms, for sure. Another offering of something she's offering. And this headdress means something. She's kind of a mixed skin. More offering to someone. She's quite thin. Doesn't appear to be wearing many clothes. Maybe it's some kind of a ceremony for something. One of the tour guides did tell me that some of these were like for love potions. I don't know. There were a couple times I asked questions and it was strange answers I got. But I mean, that makes some sense. Or offering of something. And I saw a lot of these triangular shaped coverings. It's interesting how it must have been pretty stiff because when he's squatting, it points up. This just seems like an actual representation of someone. They don't always do the hands quite naturally, but they're quite advanced in other ways. Okay, we got a couple pictures here of slaves. I wanted to put this in because we're told that the Hebrews were slaves. They didn't build the pyramids, but um, they could have been slaves there for sure. Um, but when were these slaves? I don't know. They don't seem so much as African. And they have this threading that connects them. And they're having to walk on their knees. That isn't easy. But maybe they're in the presence of some royalty. These features don't strike me as African, just some tribe of people. This looks definitely African, and they had a row of them as well, connected with this thread. So given the diversity in Egypt, I would think it wasn't based on a certain race. It was just groups of people they would get and they would become slaves or servants. Okay, and then we've got some more slides of strange hybrids. This seems like a guy. He's got a head dress on. He's got that decoration for possibly his facial hair, but then he's got a breast here or something hanging off his shoulder. I don't know. I did ask one of the tour guides about this, and she initially wasn't sure what to say, and then she came up with, well, that means he's got a child on the way and he's letting others know. It seemed weird. And there's more here. These look like men. Got an armpit breast here and here. Uh, yeah, maybe more of this gender confusion, similar to what we've got going on here in our day and age. And again, offering something to people. This looks like a woman. She's only got one breast. She's got some braided hair. Again, they're offering something. This guy looks like a man. Muscular legs, and she's quite thin. And another headdress on for her. A woman lion head. Yep, seems like a woman. She's got the curves. Circle on the head. Long arms. Different. A woman alligator head. quite thin. Strange. Are these experiments gone wrong or they turned out as they're supposed to? If anybody can function with such different anatomy and features. Hmm. And it's not just in Egypt. I mean, I've watched channels where they've uncovered maps with these kinds of hybrids all over. And strange beings with faces in the stomach. And yeah, here's another Cynocephali. This guy, he looks kind of strange. Is this a dog? Some kind of reminds me of a horse also, mane as well as the legs, feet. He's got a breast. Hmm. Okay, so we're going to have some slides on destruction. This was something that was always addressed as it's just old and it's normal for there to be decay and things coming apart and the sands blowing around and covering things over. Um, but what if it was a destruction around the time that there was a world destruction around 70 AD to 76 AD? There was one guy I was watching, and he was talking about there's evidence all over the earth that a massive fire happened. It's from the channel Biocharisma, and he calls it biochar. It's all over the earth. There is a layer of massive burning. And this strikes me as could have been some melting going on. There's a number of channels that talk about melted buildings. And they're excavating here. This is in the Valley of the Kings outside of Luxor. I connected up with a couple women and they got us into this place, and there was a tomb there. There were not many people here. And just looking at this, it looks like there's some melting going on here from heat, some steps here. And then there are tombs around in here. It was quite fascinating there, not seeing so many people. This is of Queen Pharaoh. Her name is Hatshepsut. And look at the background of that. Could be melting there. And then this beautifully excavated building. Was there more there that got damaged? Here they put in these diagrams every once in a while to let us know how they built things. They like to give us these images since you don't see this around Egypt in the hieroglyphics. So at first I thought, what were they excavating? But how they're dressed, it looks more like it's from the olden days. So would they just go to these quarry-like places and build something? Or was it a totally different topography that was buried and elements destroyed? Destruction And removal, clean removal here. There were definitely a few places I went where there was so much debris around from bigger structures, and they just hadn't organized it. We know what this is, the Sphinx, and some of the kind of mainstream alternative speakers. I can't even think of their names anymore, but I used to follow them. Um, yeah, can't think of their names now. But they're again trying to feed us a narrative of thousands and thousands of years old, maybe 10,000. I didn't see any hieroglyphs in regard to them building the Sphinx or the pyramids. So just makes me question. There does seem to be a difference in the pyramids and the Sphinx as opposed to all the tombs and the hieroglyphs. And the head of the Sphinx was a dog, as some other researchers have said, and exposure to the elements could have been underwater at some point. I know I've done so much research and listened to so many different views on this. I can't say conclusively. There's a lot we can't say conclusively, but at least we're exploring. And I put this in because when we think of the Giza Plateau, we think of the three pyramids. There are actually 9 pyramids, with 6 of them being smaller, and they call them the Queen's Chambers, or Queen's Pyramids. And I had heard a few people say, yeah, these were the practice pyramids until they did the real thing. Um, I also have wondered about some of the videos that I've seen in regard to the pyramids, like these aerial views. They seem like they're computer graphics because they don't show all 9 of the pyramids. Now, you can say, well, what does it matter? We're mainly interested in the 3 pyramids. But it's again when they give us computer graphics of a place and it's not a real representation of what's there, it it just puts false information in our heads. And I've looked at other programs on YouTube that take us to different countries, and it's so clear to me when it's computer graphics and it's not real. So it's about helping us be able to discern what's real and what's fake, which they are trying to really keep us less aware of what is real and what is fake. The more we are invested in technology teaching us without actual experience, our perception gets manipulated. So remember to let your mind and your brain waves shift to wonder. I hope it happened to some extent as you were listening to this and watching it. Got another thing I found in my photo files, which is so different. Colorful paintings of whiter looking people. And this is up high. And I did get information that Christians were part of the problem of destruction of the statues to try and hide that they were a black civilization by getting rid of the noses. And then they would just paint over with these Christian images. to again point the finger at somebody who's bad. But was this just another part of Egypt, a different time period? I don't know. Hmm. Okay, so some final thoughts about rethinking the program. Our world is not what we've been taught. Try to think of these strange beings that they're not legends or myth. They actually existed because the narratives we are given on these tours and in books and in Hollywood, it dulls our imagination. It's a different programming from what's real in many cases. The timeline. This is something that is definitely a wonder. I'm guessing it could have been around or after the time of Joseph's leadership there. Because there's a part in his story where he not only interpreted the Pharaoh's dreams, but he needed to know 70 languages in order to have a position of authority and leadership. So he was blessed by an angel to know these 70 languages. And obviously, there is diversity in Egypt at the past time. So maybe he had to learn the language of dogs. Who knows? Or maybe this is a time of after the Exodus, all of these different beings, and there was an increase of stranger beings. Because supposedly after the Exodus and a lot of the Egyptian men would have died, is there more room for different beings to become part of Egypt? And then looking at some of these beings, were they able to live together in cooperation, or was there an element of fear? I mean, for the slaves and the servants, yeah. I mean, there were definitely wars going on. But again, we don't see a lot of emotion in the images that were shown. And then just another reminder about Jesus was reported to have been to Egypt. Did he preach? Did he see repentance? Did he see healing happen for these people he prayed for? It's a wonder. And then just the last part about considering what kind of a timeline this is. I mean, there are different speculations as to the timeline, so I'm just looking at an order of events for some kind of a framework. So if we have 33 AD for Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection, and then his return around 70 to 76 AD, where there was also massive destruction all over the world in Egypt too, and then Jesus's return? Or was there some kind of a transition period? Because in some of these hagiographies I've been reading, there's a darkening of the sun and the moon for 16 months from 536 to 537 AD. Doesn't sound like that would happen during the millennial reign. So was there about 400 years of adjustment time and some repopulation, and then Jesus's millennial reign? So keep exploring because I've heard at least three different timelines. So that's why I'm just wanting to focus on a possible framework of order. And then some other archaeologists have shown evidence that archaeology and structures didn't change for about a 700-year period, which means maybe they've added 700 years to our timeline because we're a species of change and progress, supposedly. So there would have been change and building on top of other things. But from their research, that there wasn't as much change happening. So it really made them question the timeline. And then after the millennial reign, were there several years of a transition as well, and then another massive destruction that happened when the demonic force around Satan's release happened. So that we're now in Satan's little season and we're nearing the end of this time, hopefully. So I've heard about 250 years for Satan's little season. Could have been a bit longer of after the 1500s. We don't know yet. Okay. So if you want some more resources on deprogramming, I definitely include some in my book. I've included some in the articles that I've written as well. Check out my website. Yeah. Deprogramming. See this world with God's with new eyes. God's wonders of this world. So I hope that was helpful in you shifting your perspective somewhat and or looking more into this with new eyes, because our world is not what we've been taught. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.